Have you ever had a moment where something someone said or did kind of set you off and you have no idea why? Like you got defensive or your head started spiraling out of control, or maybe you responded by blowing up a little bit or shutting down or overthinking. Yeah, been there. And that, my friends, is a trigger. And if you're on any side of like psychology, TikTok, Instagram, whatever, you've probably heard this. But what I want to talk about today is how triggers can be the key to improving our lives and how exactly we do that. Because the wild part about triggers is that it's not about what's happening in that moment. It's about your subconscious kind of waving this big flag saying, hey, hello, pay attention. There's something here that we haven't dealt with yet. And today we're going to deep dive into exactly how to recognize that, figure it out, and work through it. If we haven't met yet, my name is Isabel, and on this channel, we talk all about embracing your weird in order to build a better brand, business, and life. So let's go. Healing is a process. And one of the reasons that it's a process and that it takes so long is that we're kind of blind to ourselves. We're blind to all the things that affect us. And we can't really see from the start all of those things that our subconscious believes and that have been kind of ingrained in us, right? But when we start to pay attention to our reactions or moments when we feel resistance, moments when we feel like that's not possible for me, that's when we can actually start shifting those beliefs. And that's the powerful thing about noticing and working through your triggers. Now, what exactly is a trigger? A trigger is an emotional reaction that's tied to a past experience. So something is happening in your present moment, and you are bringing your past into your present. Your subconscious is like literally pulling your past into your present because you haven't fully processed that thing from your past. You haven't fully worked through it. And so your brain is kind of like, danger, danger, something's going on, something is happening, something is wrong. And because your brain is designed to protect you, you have an adverse emotional reaction to whatever is going on. Now, these can show up as anger, shutting down, avoidance, anxiety, self-doubt, physical discomfort, a feeling like there's like a pit at your stomach. You can become frustrated, you can become defensive. But we don't usually recognize these things as triggers. And that's kind of what's interesting about it. We just think we're having a bad day, or we just think, oh, this person was not nice today, or this person was attacking me. But no, most of the time, there's something from your past that sneaked up into your present and triggered you. Now, how do you know when you're actually being triggered? You need to pay attention to the emotional reactions that you're having to something, but also ask yourself if that emotional reaction is warranted. If you see someone not stopping for a pedestrian and you're like, ugh, what a, I'm not gonna curse in this video. I'm gonna try. That's fine, right? But if you see someone that's trying to cross the street and that person doesn't stop to let the pedestrian go by, and you're like, oh my God, this ruined my entire day. I can't believe they would do that. How hard is it to hang on a second. Why is this affecting you so much? Okay. So if your reaction is way bigger than what the situation calls for, that is something that could be a trigger. Second thing is if you feel resistance, like when you see someone doing something that you wish you could do, and immediately instead of feeling inspired, you're like, well, it's easy for them, right? I couldn't do that. Or that's not something that's possible for a person like me. That's a trigger. It's a very interesting one because it shows you beliefs that you have of what's possible or not possible for you. And another thing to look out for is when you go into defense mode. So When someone's like, hey, you were late this morning, and I thought it was really weird because you're usually on time, and you immediately start justifying, or you shut down, or you get angry, or you avoid the conversation entirely when they weren't even telling you anything bad. They were like worried about you, right? Or maybe it is someone giving you a piece of constructive criticism and you spiraling over it and getting defensive and saying, well, they didn't understand what I was trying to do and they didn't understand this and they don't get that I have all these things going on. Why is there so much to pull from a tiny piece of criticism? And don't get me wrong, sometimes there are people in our lives that are not nice and are out to make everyone around them miserable. Don't pay attention to those people. But also recognize when you are blowing things a little bit out of proportion. You're getting more defensive than you should be. I had a conversation recently in which I was with several people and I said, I feel like we all haven't been doing the best job. That was my sentence. We all haven't been doing the same job, the best job. And one of them said, well, it's so easy for you to say that because I have to do this, this, and this, and that. And I was like, I didn't say you were not doing the best job. I said we are not doing the best job. And this person said, well, it felt like you were talking about me. I didn't mention that person. I didn't say, I feel like you haven't been doing your job. I said, I feel like we haven't been doing the best job. I talked about every single person in that room, including myself. So that is a trigger, but we all do this. We all have it. And it's just about recognizing it when it comes up. Now, one thing that I've noticed is that it's infinitely easier to recognize a big trigger, like a major blowout over something, than to spot a small one. The small ones are sneaky. They're kind of like little whispers. They show up as tiny moments of resistance, tiny moments of defensiveness, or even tiny moments of irritation, things that kind of annoy you, but you don't know why. And they seem insignificant, but these tiny triggers are just as important because they reveal micro beliefs that are running in the background of your day-to-day life. But also, if you start catching those little reactions, you can untangle them and let them go and get rid of them and process them before they become bigger things. Because our big triggers usually started out as small things that happened multiple times over the span of our lives and became a huge thing. If you start working on these micro beliefs, then you can kind of let them go before they become something bigger. But also, even though they're harder to recognize, they're usually easier to break down. So if you can recognize them, it gives us an amazing opportunity to practice breaking through our triggers without having to face the big, scary, hairy ones from the get-go, if that makes sense. So now that we know how to spot a trigger, how do we actually figure out where it came from? This part takes a little bit of digging. It takes a lot of self-awareness and a lot of really being open to going through your past. So first thing I would do is identify the emotion. Was I irritated? Did I feel ashamed? Did I feel angry? Did I feel fearful? Did I feel sad? Did I feel abandoned? Try to get as specific as possible with what you felt. Now, hang on. This isn't the emotion you felt or showed during the trigger itself. You're trying to find what the emotion is that caused you to react that way. For example, let's say someone came and said, hey, your hair looks really frizzy today. And I said, what's your problem? Stop talking about, I don't know, I'm trying to make something up. Stop talking about my hair. You don't know anything about my life or my day-to-day or da-da-da-da-da. I'm reacting in a defensive way. I'm reacting in an angry way, right? However, the emotion behind that has to do with what this person said about my hair in this case. So it could be that I used to feel ashamed about not knowing how to take care of my hair. And so because I feel ashamed about that, it really worries me that I don't look presentable and that my hair is frizzy or could be frizzy. And so I felt ashamed. I felt hurt when this person brought this up. That's the feeling we're looking for. We're not looking for the feeling of how I reacted. We're looking for the feeling of what caused the reaction, if that makes sense. Once you know the feeling, you're going to ask yourself, when have I felt this before? Try to go back in your childhood and see how many experiences you've had that made you feel that way. Now, sometimes it'll be things that are related, right? Like sometimes what triggered you was someone making a comment about your hair, and you'll go back into your childhood and you'll find, your school bully saying something about your hair. And so it'll be really easy to spot. However, other times it's not as simple. Other times it might be someone texted you letting you know that they weren't going to be able to make your birthday. And you don't have any memories about people not making your birthday. You don't have any memories about things like that. And then it turns out that you remember this one time that you were going to go out to the movies with your best friends, and none of them were able to make it that day. And you ended up going to the movies by yourself. And that made you feel really lonely, maybe even abandoned. And so really, the feeling that came up with this person not being able to make your birthday was brought on by that one time that your friends weren't able to make the movies. Those are harder to spot, but they're still possible to spot. And then step 3 is to look for patterns. What are the situations, people, phrases, things, topics that usually set you off? If it's your hair, if it's abandonment, if it's rejection, try to figure what things set you off, because the things that usually set you off time and time again are your big, scary, hairy triggers, because your brain connects certain situations that repeat time and time again with certain feelings. And once you see that pattern, you can start rewriting the story. That's when you can start saying, is this true? But let me get to that. You've spotted the trigger, you've traced it back, you know the feeling, you know like where it can come from. What do you do with that information? First thing, we recognize that healing isn't about avoiding triggers, it is actually about understanding them. What happened? Why did it happen? And why does it make me feel this way? Now, I want to make a little pause here because it's really important that we're compassionate with ourselves when we do this work. Events do not affect every human the same way. Someone might cancel on me, like they might say, hey, I can't make your birthday. And I might say, oh my gosh, that makes me so sad. This person doesn't love me anymore, right? Whereas someone might cancel their birthday and they're like, oh, yeah, okay, it's okay. We'll go, let's meet up next week anyways. And they won't pause, or it won't affect them. So recognize that no matter how small or tiny you think the situation itself was, if it affected you, it affected you. And don't write it off just because it seems silly or like, oh, other people go through so much worse. Yeah, but this affected you. And you have to have the self-compassion to recognize that and know that it's okay and work through it. So going back, because it's not avoiding triggers, it's about understanding them. What I mean about that is you're not supposed to go, oh, you know what? This conversation about my hair really triggered me. So I'm going to tell every single person in my life to never talk about my hair again. Okay. You're not really working through it then. You're avoiding it, right? You can't bubble wrap yourself from the world. And at some point, someone's going to come into your life, someone new you're going to meet, and they're going to be like, hey, I really like your hair today. And you're going to be immediately triggered. And that trigger is going to be worse because you're so used to avoiding it that you're not going to be expecting it. So don't avoid them. Second thing is, you need to start reframing the story. Start asking yourself, is this belief actually true? Or is this my past talking? And then look for evidence. Because you can tell yourself, oh, you know what? I don't actually believe that I'm not good enough. But your brain is going to be like, well, I have all this evidence to prove that you're not from your past. So we want to look for evidence that you are, whether that's in your past achievements, whether that's in present achievements, whether that's texting a friend and saying, hey, can you tell me why you think I'm a great friend? Or whether that's finding people like you who you identify with who are doing similar things to the things you want to be doing. We want to get curious, not judgmental. Instead of saying, oh, why am I like this? Say, what is this thing from my past trying to tell me? And do I want this belief in my life? Or do I want to work through it? Do I want to let it go? Do I want to change it? Now, the other thing I want to say is this isn't about fixing yourself because you're not broken. It's about becoming aware of the stories from your past that are affecting your present in a way that's going to affect your ability to create the future you want for yourself. If you want to be an astrophysicist, but you don't believe you can be an astrophysicist, then you won't be an astrophysicist. So you need to work through that belief and break it down and tear it apart and rebuild it so that you can have the belief that it's possible to be an astrophysicist and then go and become an astrophysicist. And you can change the word astrophysicist for whatever you want to be or whatever you want to do in your life. That is how you take your power back. And if this resonated with you, let's keep the conversation going. Have you ever noticed a tiny trigger in your life? Something that you were like, why did I get annoyed at this? Why is this so irritating to me? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your experience. And if you found this helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that little bell notification button thing so that you don't miss out on any more videos. I make new ones like this every single Friday. So until then, stay wild, stay weird. I'll see you in the next one.